and even some of the Uniates who revere basically all of the pillars of Orthodoxy. So even St. Mark of Ephesus, right? I mean, amazing to think that you can oppose Florence, but Roman Catholics will accept you as a saint, and then others not. And so what we begin to see is that really what the Roman Catholic Church is a vast umbrella that is supposed to be a unified system and a system that provides clarity, and it does not do that. In fact, its only strength is in affirming the papacy as an end in itself. Meanwhile, you can do and have any of the views that you want. Now, that's a long-time criticism that Roman Catholics, of course, scoffed at, especially during the more traditional pre-Vatican II periods. However, since Francis, that criticism, and Vatican II, I mean, that criticism has really hit home, right? Because nobody can honestly, especially in our day, especially in the years of the Francis pontificate, say that Francis has been a source of unity. I've never seen, I mean, I came into Roman Catholicism under John Paul II back in the day, back in 2003, in the Novus Ordo, by the way, before I went to the Trad Latin Mass. And at that time, I mean, it was still a burgeoning trad movement that was not large, but I would say, I don't know, maybe, most large cities had at least one SSPX chapel or maybe an FSSP chapel, right? So the fissure was not near what it is now. And the reason I bring that up is that David's video makes just an astounding point, not just this video, but the other one that he did on Ibarra's Fatal Flaw. And it really addresses the recent Lofton video on the issues with the Moscow Patriarchate in Africa in the easiest, simplest way. And that is just simply to say that if you think that looking at a church and seeing a schism amongst patriarchates is itself an argument against that ecclesiology or that church, then by your own definition, the first 1,000 years of Christianity, which was united, is thereby flawed because there were divisions amongst the patriarchates in the first 1,000 years. Do you see how silly and stupid this argument is? He has relied on this argument, and Ibarra, for years, and it is just completely dumb. I want to be clear that you get this argument, right? Because it's so obvious that it flies over some people's heads and they don't understand it, right? So the argument is the Orthodox Church is fraught with these problems of unity because of internal disagreements between patriarchates. And that itself is an example, a way to show that because the Moscow Patriarchate is against the EP, the Orthodox Church and its ecclesiology can't be the case, aren't true, and are missing the office of the papacy. But wait a minute. On that view, on their view as Roman Catholics, for the first 1,000 years, the church is loosely speaking united, and yet it contains divisions and schisms with patriarchates and condemned popes, and it had the papacy, and yet there were these gigantic schisms. So do you see how this argument turns back on these Guber's own head? It's just such a brain-dead argument. It's like these people literally have never had an epistemology class, right? Lofton's like, I had a couple philosophy classes back in the day. I don't think you had any, and maybe you had one, right? But I mean, and the reason I say that is because if you had basic logic, basic philosophy classes, basic epistemology, you would know and you would be able to see the flaws in these stupid arguments, right? Like David has a video, which we'll pull up here in a second, illustrating this point, precisely about Ibarra, where he uses this argument. I want you to see this. We're going to kick off with this. We might as well just kick off with this because it's a really great point. Where Ibarra, and David included it in his like 10 worst arguments video, right? So let's listen to a little bit of this argumentation.
The serpent is.
Who the serpent? Man, am I the only person sick of that dude? I don't know anything about the serpent is. Like, if you're a snake, how do you speak? How does a snake speak? Anyway, so let's look at this fatal flaw argument. It's essentially repeated by all of this crew as if it's a good argument. And again, what it shows is just a reliance on their audience not paying attention or not looking into these things or not thinking about this, right? So let's be really clear what this argument is. And you're going to notice Ibarra make a different version of it, right? Ibarra's not going to be talking about the Moscow Patriarchate, but it's the same argument at work here. So let's let David make a few points here.
Because I came across this comment by online apologist Eric Ibarra. Now, this is someone that we know, and the comment is mind-numbingly stupid. I will be...
Somebody said Lofton is getting a PhD. I don't even know if that's true or not, but my point, there's a lot of dumb PhDs. My point was that he doesn't understand what it means to justify claims and to do good argumentation. That's what I'm trying to say. So you can get a PhD in all kinds of things. Remember when I debated JF? Well, JF has a PhD. Just having a PhD mean the argumentation was good? No, of course not. So who cares about a PhD, really?
Very harsh in this because this is one of the stupidest comments I have ever read concerning Orthodoxy ever in my life. For those who don't know, Eric Ibarra is a Roman Catholic papal lawyer, apologist. His main work
is that better? Somebody said there's an echo.
Collecting a bunch of quotes from church fathers that speak nice things about Rome and acting as if that means they're defending the first council of the Vatican. That's really what he does. But when he goes outside of that, you see what happens with him. And I will read this writing really quickly, and then I will step by step go across what's wrong with this writing. So he says that there's a bit of a jungle waiting for the convert in need of communion. For while we speak of orthodoxy in the singular, there are in fact orthodoxies if you respect other Eastern bodies such as the Syrian Church of the East. and the Syriac Coptic Ethiopic Indian Orthodox, the Byzantines famously stuck it up with the West until the second millennium, but there are earlier breaks within the East. Of course, today there's a severance between Moscow and Constantinople, Antioch and Jerusalem, the significance of which continues to be downplayed in light of some category of half-medium schism. And finally, the true...
Okay, so there you go. There is Eric pointing out basically this argument, right, that the Moscow Patriarchate versus the EP, which, by the way, we've covered that in previous podcasts a long time ago. And I actually talked about this being a problem 10 years ago, right? I was talking about the problems with Bartholomew. So it's not like this is some, like they discovered this big, like, whoa, we got him. There's like this problem. This is a problem that has plagued the church since the earliest days. Divisions and schisms between patriarchates. Constantinople I, as we've pointed out many times, was called, convoked, convened outside of communion with Rome, dogmatized the Trinity on the basis of the Cappadocians. And this was presided over by St. Meletius, who also died outside of Rome. And the Roman Catholic Church today accepts Constantinople I, the Second Council, as dogmatic, guided by the Holy Spirit, and presided over by a saint who died out of communion with Rome. How in the world does that match up with Unum Sanctum, which says that no one can be saved outside of communion with the Bishop of Rome? How does that match up to Cantate Domino,